One of the things, the consequences of the Swedish and the British prosecuting teams holding Julian Assange trapped, unable to clear his name because they would arrest him, they wouldn't interview him, they wouldn't question him, so he was stuck. So one of the consequences of that was that the sex allegations, he couldn't clear his name. They weren't lifted for years. And what the consequence of that was that the paper, the media, mainstream media was able, and the government were able to just drip, drip, drip that constant, he's a sex offender, he's a sex offender. And so when the United Nations Arbitrary Detention Working Group claimed this is arbitrary detention, the government then laughed and said it was ridiculous. He was just some sex offender who was taking refuge. Now imagine if the Swedish authorities had come over in 2012, interviewed him, cleared his name, because it would have given him the opportunity then to clear his name. That narrative would have gone. There wouldn't be that. He would have been quite obviously a political prisoner.
Yeah.
But because that was left hanging, because they enabled that, they kept that narrative there hanging because of the way they use the law. That they've used that to that's what people have now got in their heads.
Yeah, they've used it to sort of assassinate his character by this slow drip of information. I can really see it too. They were what significance? He was taken out of the embassy. I wanted to ask you about this because this is just before the was it the United Nations were about to go and check on Julian, weren't they? And
right. Yes.
I think there was some politicians, I'm not sure, that from Germany that had just been there, and I think the Ecuadorian president Leonel Moreno, he was a few days away from going to that meeting over in Washington. Do you feel as if they rushed this? They really did rush it, or they just took the opportunity as soon as they could? Because I do feel, Nina, especially with the state of politics in this country at the moment, in that they're rushing it because they're shit scared that there's going to be another election and there's going to be another government that necessarily isn't going to, bend over for the Americans whenever they want us to be serviced or us to service them in some way. Do you feel as if this is all being rushed, or whether it's all been years and years of planning coming into fruition?
It's. I mean, I think they've been planning. I think was it Craig Murray? I read an article by him. He's a friend of Julian Assange, and I think he made the point that the authorities, the UK and the Swedish and the US, probably waited once they knew they trapped him, and it had the Korea government was sympathetic. So they literally just waited. So they waited, and then there was a change of government. And then when Moreno came in, then they saw that opportunity. And since then, it was escalating. Just how much influence, how much impact the visit. I did actually ask Alfred de Zayas that question, if he thought that the anticipated visit by, I think it was the Niels Melzer, I think he was the torture, the UN rapporteur
for torture, yeah.
Yeah, and he was the one that was due. And Alfred de Zayas wasn't sure that actually made that much difference, because he said it was on the cards anyway, because there are so many things happening. It's what's the trigger and what, And
of course, they just bloody ignore anything the UN have said so far, haven't they? They've just ignored it.
Oh yeah, it's. I'm just going to make one last point about the importance of the sex allegations being kept as as a weapon, so they were able to use it as a weapon. The MPs, obviously, so when he was arrested, there was big cheers and support, and then we had 70 MPs that signed a letter. Saying they wanted him to be extradited. There were no, as far as anyone was aware, investigation had not been reopened, and there they were asking Sweden to extradite him on sex allegation. So the important thing about that, there's a number of things about that. Obviously, it's a cover because they go off on this sex allegation narrative or history, it covers the the UK subservience to the US. I mean, it's covering that, but it's also, they did that on the back of refugees. The MP that wrote the letter is Stella Creasy, and Stella Creasy has been the champion of the rights of refugees, you know, all the time in Parliament. We should have rights for refugees, we should allow them. When they actually stopped the Dobbs Amendment, the refugee rights,
right,
she was very vocal about that. So that's one of her things. So what's the implication of that? So Julian Assange was removed from dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy on the basis of his human rights, asylum rights being trodden on, being totally stripped away from him. And Stella Creasy took advantage of that. She used the betrayal of asylum rights in order to send him off to Sweden for her own identity politics agenda. So she has betrayed. I mean, you could say, well, it was none of her business. She didn't. It was nothing to do with her that his asylum rights were removed. But she's used that in order to push her own agenda, and that's betrayal of. You know, she shouldn't be doing that, because what they've done is they've now set a precedent saying, we're not really that bothered about asylum rights. Someone could have their asylum rights stripped in the UK, and we'll send them off, we'll deport them, we'll extradite them. You know, that's a precedent.
It's also in my mind demeaning real victims of sexual assault. You know, because there are people out there who had real victims and have not been treated well by the police and the authorities at all, who have dismissed their claims. And here they've gone in the opposite direction as to what they normally have done, just to persecute Julian Assange and just to try and make things, well, to torture him into actually leaving.
It's just a denial of due process as well. So you can say, well, you know, there are charges against him, he's got to be sent away. He's entitled to due process. If you have allegations are made against you, you must have due process. You must be able to, there should be some, you know, law should be fair and reasonable, shouldn't it? No one should just be able to pack you off because and send you somewhere because someone's made an allegation. It should be, you're entitled to a fair due process.
If you like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe and click the bell below so you get a notification of when I drop further videos. If you click the links on the screen as well through to my website, you can find out ways to support me. I can't do this without your help, and I really do appreciate it. Thanks very much for all your support, and until next time, peace and take care.